Shayla Favor. I'm the newest council member, and we are here this afternoon to discuss a new fee schedule proposed by the Development Department. So I would like to officially call the proposed fee schedule public hearing to order at this time. There are no council members present, so we can continue to move forward. I'd like to thank our residents who have elected to attend today's public hearing. This is also being recorded, and so we do understand this is in the middle of the day. And if there are questions about the fee schedule, please do not hesitate to reach out to our office or to the Department of Development for further explanation. I would like to introduce Director Steve Shoney, who oversees the Department of Development. Director, thank you for being here and for providing your knowledge and expertise as it relates to the subject matter at hand. I will call upon you momentarily just to discuss and provide some remarks regarding this subject. The City of Columbus Department of Development is in the process of updating and or implementing their fee schedule for the following areas as it relates to the community reinvestment areas, tax incentive, financing, land redevelopment, and some additional areas. The proposal includes updates to the application, amendment, and administrative and additional fees as well. If you did not pick up a copy of the proposed fee schedule, please pick one up right outside of the door there that provides the exhaustive list of fees that are being proposed here. I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to Director Shoney to explain the proposal in further detail.
Thank you, Chair Favor, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today and explain these changes. In terms of background, we started this process a couple of years ago as part of our comprehensive incentives review with great cooperation from current council member Elizabeth Brown and your predecessor, Jiza Page, in helping us go through that process. And in looking at that process, uncovered a number of things, one of which was, as you look at fees, you have two purposes in fees. One is to recover costs, and two is to direct behavior and to encourage certain kinds of behavior. What we found as we looked at our fees through that comprehensive process is that we weren't covering some of the costs that we needed to cover, and as a consequence, frankly, we were seeing behavior on some of the applicants that we needed to try and use this as a motivation to correct. And this was across not just our incentive programs, but you'll see we also have some changes to code enforcement fees, some of our housing fees, and a variety of other things. So we took a comprehensive approach to looking at our fees. We went through and analyzed across a number of different categories the fees that we're charging and made some adjustments. I'll go to my notes for a moment if you'll indulge me. For the Economic Development Division, we took a look at both our fees related to jobs incentives and our fees related to property tax incentives, including community reinvestment areas, enterprise zones, and tax increment financing districts. We proposed an initial fee schedule, and then we went out and met with and did stakeholder outreach to users of those incentive programs. We had initially gone out with one set of fees that focused more on charging fees for subsequent amendments. What we learned from having outreach with our stakeholders was that the preference was to have more fees up front and have a simpler back-end fee structure, so we made that change in response. Additionally, for our jobs programs, when we looked at the costs of what we were doing and tried to balance that with the fact that these are incentives, so you don't want to put too many fees on, our jobs program incentives were increasing our application fees from $250 to $500, and we're increasing our processing fee from $2,000 to $2,500, and increasing our annual monitoring fee by about $250. We don't know how much money that will bring in at this point. We need to see how that plays out over the course of this year. We're confident that it will help offset our staff. One of the things that's very important to us, as you know, is ensuring that because we're dealing with public dollars, we have a robust monitoring system. So that takes staff, that takes time. These fees will be used to offset those staff costs. That will not fully offset those staff costs. There will still need to be, whether it's general fund or CDBG or other fund sources that we'll be using in the budget. But hopefully over time, this will defray an increasing portion of that cost and or allow us to add more staff if we believe it's necessary to add more staff for monitoring. We do have some new fees. We have an annual monitoring fee for the downtown office incentive and jobs growth incentive of $250. All of our commercial abatement and jobs programs will now have a reporting late fee. To my point earlier about fees driving behavior, we didn't have a late fee. And so as a consequence, there wasn't as much of a motivation for businesses to get the reporting in. So now we have a $500 late fee for abatement programs and $250 late fee for job programs. We have proposed new fees for our PACE program, which is Property Assessed Clean Energy program, our new community authorities and TIF programs. These are large, complex incentive programs that are used by developers to help defray certain costs of putting infrastructure in, oftentimes clean infrastructure. They are a intensive process for us in terms of the kinds of legislation that we need to pass, as well as some legal requirements that we have. So we're trying to pretty much fully recoup our costs in those programs. That's the summary for economic development. For housing, we are, based on our new housing incentive policy, we have a new fee schedule that was created to support our new programming, which includes application fees, monitoring fees, and community reinvestment area creation fees. We have a fee schedule that's attached. This fee schedule, we were very purposeful in making sure that we graduated the fees to reflect the strength of the markets in which we were doing the incentives. So if a business is seeking an incentive in a stronger market in one of our market-ready neighborhoods, then the fees are going to be higher. If they're working in one of our ready for opportunity neighborhoods, then we're in more of a situation where we're willing to absorb some of those costs within the city because it's the right thing to do to encourage investment in those areas.
Director Shoney, if I could interrupt for just a moment, and for our viewers at home, could you identify the areas that fall within the market-ready category?
Yeah, right now, we have two community reinvestment areas that fall within the market-ready category. Those are our Short North Community Reinvestment Area and our 5th by Northwest Community Reinvestment Area. And thank you for that, asking for that clarification. We also, there have been no adjustments to our land bank fees. We're keeping our land bank fees the same. I will say we're regularly, I was going to say constantly, but it's not quite constantly, but we're regularly reevaluating what we charge for land bank properties. We're required by city code to sell our properties for a market rate price. That requires kind of a constant reevaluation. And it's also, as you know, a balancing act between trying to fund the land bank program through our sales of properties, but also encouraging investment in those areas that are struggling to see investment. So that is a balance we're always trying to undertake. We have, in terms of selling our properties, taken a more market-based approach in those neighborhoods where we still have properties and the market has fully turned. Think the Near East Side. We're being more aggressive in seeking income from those properties or doing things like putting them in the land trust, which we'll be talking about in a little bit later this afternoon. And then finally, code enforcement. We have proposed the addition of 3 new fees. A reinspection fee of $100 was added to both the dwelling unit license, shared bath and rooming house license categories. There is an existing reinspection fee for the junkyard license category. And we have created a penalty of $480 for operating a rooming house without a license. So those are 2 new penalties. Again, our objective in code enforcement is not to collect fees, it's to achieve compliance, but one of the ways to achieve compliance is through fines. That's the summary of our fees. I'd be happy to take any additional questions or provide any additional clarification.
Thank you, Director Shoney. At this time, we will move towards the public testimony portion of the hearing. We do have one speaker slip at this time. Minister Ashe, if you would join us at the podium. And each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. There will be a soft buzzer to let you know your time has expired.
Okay. Giving honor to God and to Councilwoman and Chair Shayla Favors and Mr. Shoney, Director of Development. I have basically just a couple of questions. It is not so much a public comment on the fees. One question that I have that I know a lot of people will ask me when I present this to them in the community is this fee that deals with code letter inspections. A lot of people's houses or fences or garages or whatever may not be up to code, and then the code inspector comes by and he issues a citation, and I'm not sure, so I'm asking this question. To get that inspection done, is that the $240 fee, and then a follow-up inspection $145, or does that not apply to local residents? That's my question.
Madam Chair, if I may. I don't think I can answer that question myself. I'm going to ask Heather Truesdale, our Code Enforcement Administrator, to come on up and help address that question.
And Ms. Truesdale, if you could identify yourself for the viewing audience as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Heather Truesdale. I'm the Code Enforcement Administrator with the Code Enforcement Division. I will try to answer that question. These are not fees that are assessed when we do our routine inspections. Those were inspections that were used in the past for owner-occupied properties where we requested to do an inspection of the property prior to occupancy. It's not necessarily based on our standard go to call 311, we received a complaint, and then the code officer comes out and does an inspection. Those charges are not, there's no charge. No, it does not apply to those things.
That's number one.
And just to clarify, there is no additional charge for a reinspection of the property to ensure code compliance?
No, there is not. It's a free inspection, and then if there are violation notices issued, then we work with property owners to gain compliance.
Okay, well, that's important because a lot of the people that I represent in the community, they saw this and they said, oh, wait a minute, I don't have that kind of money to have my property inspected and re-inspected. So that answers that question. I can tell them that. Then basically, the other question I think I have, I'm working on getting a hemp factory here to Columbus, Ohio, and it should create 650 jobs to start and maybe 1,000 jobs at its peak. And I see the job creation tax credit, it's $500. Now, maybe you could explain some of that to me, just basically how does that, if we're going to create 1,000 jobs, do we have to pay that to get the credit, or how does that work?
Minister Shea, the way that works is that is an application fee for the ability to apply for the credit. The job creation tax credit is a tax credit that is based on the payroll that is, the city income tax revenue that is collected from or withheld from employees for a business. Those dollars come in after business has been operating for at least a year. We have a reporting process, but upfront to ensure that, number one, we have the resources to be able to process those accurately, and also, frankly, to ensure that we are dealing with businesses that are serious. We do charge what, in the case of a operation the size you're talking about, a nominal fee to begin that process.
Okay. And the community reinvestment area, $750 and $3,000 administrative fee. Is that $3,000 an increase from where it was last year?
So there were no fees previously to set those community reinvestment areas up. So this is not for an individual. So setting the area up is not for, say, an individual homeowner that's looking to do this. Typically, these are developer-driven. When a new project's coming in, it's to offset our cost of going out and doing the research, the filings with the Ohio Department of Administrative Services, and various other costs that we have in setting that up.
Okay, Chair Favors, basically those are the basic questions that I have. I'm not in opposition to any of that. Mr. Shuney's been very capable in his dealing with the community, and his office is open to us to come and to talk and discuss with him anything that has to come up. I tried to get a gold mining company here to get the gold out of the computer parts through a chemical process, but I lost that to Detroit. So hopefully by the end of the year, maybe I can get the second hemp factory here in Columbus, Ohio, and we can hire 1,000 people, and we'll work with the Department of Development here in the city and also Franklin County Department of Development. So it's an ongoing process. And I've talked with Department of Economic Development personnel about that. But basically that answers my question. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And I believe that is the end of our questions. That will conclude our public testimony and the hearing today as it relates to the fee schedule. As I indicated before, if you weren't able to attend and you still have some questions that were not answered by the presentation by Director Shoney, please feel free to reach out to our office as well as to the Department of Development. They would be more than ready to answer any questions that a constituent could potentially have. Thank you, and that concludes the hearing. We will adjourn for the moment and pick back up at 4 o'clock for our Community Land Trust hearing that starts at 4. Thank you.